I think I want to start by sharing with you a personal experience that I had this week. I traveled a little bit up north here, 20 minutes from home. It's already evacuated communities. And I always say that it is impossible to explain and to film emptiness. Impossible. And I went to communities that were evacuated, and you see everything is as if people were there yesterday or today, but actually no children. And the only one that is present in these communities is the rapid response force, which are actually people that are from the community who were experienced in combat, that were drafted to the army, and they are now defending their own communities, but their families are not there. Their families left, and they are in hotels, actually refugees inside Israel, with no understanding when they will be able to go back to their homes. And I came back home extremely sad from these sites. And I live across the synagogue, so I went. It was a praying service for the hostages to come back. One of the hostages is from my town. And the rabbi who led the service, our rabbi from the town, he came on uniforms because he's also drafted with reserves. And I filmed part of the service, and I filmed them cry, and I became very emotional, and I ended the service, and I went back here to Alma, and I was interviewed to I-24. And I had to calm down. I had like 10 minutes to calm down and put my makeup again and go live on I-24. And I don't know, this experience, other than being professional, and we're going to talk a lot of professional stuff here today, I wanted to share with you this very small personal experience, because this is kind of what we have here. And above all the feelings that we experienced since October 7, I think the deepest feeling is the sadness that we lost areas that the residents are evacuated, and we don't know when they will be able to go back. So I think it's time to start. I see that people are still joining in. Maybe I should say one sentence about the videos that you see behind me. On this side, you see a Cornet missile for a very advanced missile. This is anti-tank missile that just missed the vehicle from which this video, it's part of the video, was taken from. And the missile missed it and actually landed a few meters from the vehicle, and that's what the camera on the vehicle saw. And the people in the vehicle were very lucky. And on the other side here, you see a Hezbollah video, a video that was made by Hezbollah that actually put together all or not all, but various hits of homes in northern Israel by these missiles, these accurate missiles. So these are direct hits of Hezbollah in our homes here in northern Israel, next to the border, in various towns, Kiryat Shmona, Manara, Metula. And the feeling is that we are being hunted. At the beginning of this week, we had a mother and her son of 45 years old were killed while they were eating lunch in Kfar Yuval, one of these communities. And the missile just targeted the kitchen and went through the window of the kitchen and killed them. That's the threat that we are facing now in northern Israel. So if we get started, for all of you who joined us now, I want to summarize the past 100 days with numbers for a minute or two, okay? We have almost 800 Israeli civilians that were killed by Hamas on October 7th. And since this war started, we have 522 fallen soldiers, 188 of them, I heard it today, it's 190, fell in the ground operation in Gaza or in Lebanon, not inside Lebanon, of course, on the Lebanese border. We have 11 soldiers that were killed and 6 civilians. Hezbollah lost around 160 military operatives, actually terrorists. Most of them were involved in the shooting against Israel, and others are commanders, sometimes even direct assassinations against commanders and Hezbollah military operatives that are involved in the fightings against Israel. Hamas is holding 136 Israelis in captivity, and 24 of them were killed by Hamas. One was killed by the IDF while attempting to rescue him, and 3 others were killed by the IDF as a result of a mistake. By Israeli government order, we have 138,000 civilians were evacuated in the southern part of Israel, and 60,000 more that were evacuated in the northern part of Israel, in the area where I live. I personally was not evacuated. I live 9 kilometers from the border. The evacuees live less than that, between 0 to 5 or 4 kilometers from the border. We have 20,000 more here in the north that voluntarily evacuated, decided to leave because it's impossible to live like that. 9,000 rockets were shot from Gaza, and 2,000 rockets, drones, anti-tanks, mortars were launched from Lebanon, and 30 were launched from Syria. 10% of all projectiles failed either in Gaza or in Lebanon. We have 15,000 Israelis, civilians and soldiers that were wounded and treated in the hospitals in Israel, and around 10,000 Hamas members that were eliminated, part in October 7th inside Israel, and 9,000 in the operation in Gaza. And 7,600 trucks with humanitarian aid enter Gaza since October 7th. That's a lot of trucks. In West Bank, 2,600 terrorists were arrested, Palestinian terrorists were arrested in the West Bank. Half of them are affiliated with Hamas, half of them. According to IDF information, almost 300,000 reservists were called up since the beginning of the war. The average amount of days in reserves is 60 days. And if I'm a little bit zooming out from Israel, since this war started, the Houthis carried out 33 attacks against either civilian or military targets, Israel or a coalition or civilian ships in the Red Sea, in the Arab Gulf. Tonight we even had a missile attack from Iran. There have been 14 attacks that involved also responses, crossfire, Houthis and US forces or others as well. In Iraq, more than 120 attacks of the militias in Iraq and Syria against US forces in these areas, and less than 10 retaliations. Now, the past few days were very intense, I must say. We can talk of different trends, sometimes contradicted trends on the different arenas that may enable us to give here some kind of evaluation of where this is heading. And I will be very, very careful because we don't know. And after October 7th, every evaluation should be very modest. In Gaza, the spokesperson of the IDF and our defense minister, our leadership actually said it clearly that in the northern part of Gaza, we already moved to what we call the third phase. The first phase is the aerial strikes. The second phase is the ground maneuver with full power. And the third phase is more like raids of forces, the ground forces on specific places to try to neutralize what's left of Hamas. What do I mean? It means that in the northern part of Gaza, Israel gained the control. Hamas doesn't have the control anymore, but there is still presence here and there of Hamas terrorists that even launch rockets. Yesterday, there was a launching of rockets to Sderot from northern part of Gaza. This can happen, and that's why IDF is still active there. At the same time, we didn't finish the second phase in the middle of Gaza and in the southern part of Gaza, but there is a progress towards that. And that's why you see in the past month a release of reservists, sending people home after they were drafted since the war started. We've seen this in the past 2 weeks many times, because we gained a very meaningful achievement in the northern part of Gaza. Of course, the feeling that Israel actually decided to move from a maneuver from a ground operational big maneuver to something a little bit different also has risks in this. And the main risk is the feeling that we are kind of Gaza becoming our traumatic Lebanon, that it's not going to end, that we are going to continue to fight and continue to fight. And we don't know what's the schedule, and we don't see the ending of this. And I believe that among Israelis, we said that the goals are to bring back the hostages, to finish with Hamas, as the symbol is actually to find Sinwar, to kill Sinwar or arrest Sinwar. And it didn't happen yet. And all of us in Israel understand that it takes time. There is an option that Sinwar is no longer in Gaza. I don't have any information, but it's an option because of the tunnels. And it's going to take time. And we all understand it's going to take time. And of course, there is a big question. If this is going to take time, what's with the people that cannot go back to their homes? What is with rebuilding Gaza? What is with the North? A lot of questions around that. So there are, on the one hand, huge military achievements. Every day, IDF expose more tunnels, more piers, more munitions in the homes. But at the same time, there is a fear here that we will be stopped before all the goals of this war will be achieved. And for Israelis, it is highly important to achieve the goals of this war. Bringing back the hostages and defeating Hamas, both goals, even though the feeling is that there is growing contradiction between the two goals. And it's a big question, what to do. Let's go to Lebanon. Let's go to the northern border now. And I must say that IDF is publishing very little information about what is being attacked by the IDF in South Lebanon. So it is difficult for Alma Center as a civilian organization to truly evaluate the strategic damage to Hezbollah. Our impression is that there is very little damage to the capabilities of Hezbollah with regard to launching rockets. We see that every day Hezbollah continues to launch anti-tank missiles, and it's just a matter of decision. Yet, the fact that there were assassinations in the past 2 weeks against senior commanders in Hezbollah, and the fact that we see a more proactive approach by the IDF, that actually it looks like its goal is to maximize the military achievements as much as possible, but below the level of a full-scale war. Of course, there is a risk in this, that a full-scale war will happen anyway, and no one here can put the finger of how and when exactly this will happen. So as I've said, we feel that the IDF approach is different. It's more proactive. We see even attacks in areas which are not specifically near the border, but a few tens of kilometers from the border. But this is not a defeat. This is not damaging the strategic capabilities of Hezbollah. And it's not even pushing Hezbollah north to the Litani River, which is a phrase that many people use these days. Hezbollah is responding as well. And in one of the videos that you can see behind me, you can see attacks also against an IDF base, the aerial control base, which is in Mount Meron, which was hit by direct anti-tank missiles against with a range of 8 to 10 kilometers, very direct hits that cause damage. And these are the responses of Hezbollah. We also had a drones attack against the Northern Command that we didn't intercept, and they actually hit the Northern Command in Sfat. We all understand that if this will go out of control and there will be a full-scale war, Iron Dome is not going to give us 100% protection. And we see this today as well. At the same time, of everything that is happening here up north that I've just described, we see growing international pressure to stop the fire. And here I must say that I want to give you the full picture, and the full picture is composed of what Hezbollah wants and what Nasrallah said and what international community is saying, which is not necessarily the same. Nasrallah in his speeches said that it will stop the fire only if there will be a ceasefire in Gaza. In this respect, this is very interesting because until today, Nasrallah was very careful not to drag Lebanon into full-scale war with Israel for the cause of the Palestinians, for the cause of Hamas. And I think that in the end of the day, Nasrallah is interested to bring an achievement to Lebanon, an achievement that will put Hezbollah again as the protector of Lebanon, as the one who is taking care of the Lebanese interests. What does that mean? And this connects to the negotiations that are now going on. It means that part of the Lebanese demands in these negotiations is that if Hezbollah should withdraw north to the Litani River, Israel should withdraw from northern Rajah and from Sheba Farms. Now, I want to explain what does that mean. First, these two areas were taken from Syria. The people of Rajah, who are Alawite Arabs, are saying we are either Israelis, they are Israeli citizens, or Syrians, but we are not Lebanese. During the years, Lebanon claimed that Sheba Farms and northern Rajah is Lebanese. When the UN marked the border after the Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon, it marked the border in the middle of Rajah and said that the northern part of Rajah is Lebanese and the southern part of Rajah is Israeli that used to be Syria. Now, this is a humanitarian issue. How do you divide a village? What, you evacuate the population, you abandon the northern part, these are Israeli citizens, and all of a sudden they will become Lebanese? What does that mean exactly? Withdrawal from northern Rajah. At the same way, what does that mean exactly? Withdrawal of Hezbollah north to the Litani River. It feels like Hezbollah is a foreign militia that took over South Lebanon and now it has to withdraw. It's not the case. Hezbollah is fully embedded with the South Lebanese population. About 60% of the Hezbollah military operatives that were killed by Israel since this war started live in South Lebanon. How can they withdraw? They live there. The munition, the missiles, the drones, the mortars, the anti-tanks, all this munition of Hezbollah is hidden inside the homes of the Lebanese or under the homes of the Lebanese, and the same sites that we all saw coming out of Gaza of the human shield tactic exist in South Lebanon and elsewhere in Lebanon. So my question is, if we have a diplomatic arrangement, and I'm saying arrangement, who will be the enforcement? Who will be responsible for enforcement? What kind of international force will be capable of going home to home, taking the rockets out, and fighting Hezbollah instead of the IDF? And I don't have a good answer to this question. I'm sorry, I don't have answers to all the questions. I'm afraid that we will end up with an arrangement that will have no deadline, no enforcement, and we will pay the price we are demanded to pay with regard to Sheba farms or Raja, or I don't know, whatever. This is a huge, and ceasefire. This is a huge problem. So in this respect, the statement of Nasrallah maybe bought more time to the IDF with its proactive approach to try to gain as many military achievements as possible during these negotiations. Funny to say it, I know, but this is how it feels. The other option is war. The other option, we talked about diplomatic arrangement, we talk about attacks, proactive approach during the negotiations. The other option is war, going for the strategic capabilities of Hezbollah. This also comes with a tag price, of course. It also comes with a tag price. As I've said, the evaluations are of 4,000 rockets that will be launched every day by Hezbollah to Israel. Of course, Iron Dome will not be able to intercept all of them, and it's also a high price with regard to the tag price of Iron Dome itself. The bottom line is that the feeling in Israel is that on the one hand, the clock is ticking. It is impossible for the Israeli economy to draft the reservists for a year, 2 years. This is a huge damage. A lot of money is needed. IDF needs to rebuild, freshen up, I don't know how to say it in English, to prepare for another front. And people need to go back to their homes. And all these questions remain open at this point, except we feel that with the international clock, we don't have too much time. Either with Hamas, and nor with Hamas, neither with Hezbollah. There is a lot of pressure on Israel to get to a ceasefire. It's election year in the United States, and we understand it. I think, and many people ask me that, and I didn't take a look at your Q&A, and you are now invited to write your questions, because in a minute I will address all your, as far as possible, all your questions. I think there is another key here, which is Iran. And this is not Bill dealt. Iran is the mastermind behind this campaign. Iran trained, financed, and armed militias all over the Middle East. And these militias are now independent to execute the campaign. They got the order to execute the campaign, and I believe the order was given because of the normalization process between Israel and Saudi Arabia to stop the normalization process. I believe that in any case, Iran intended to execute this plan and at this time or another, but the order was given. Hamas did what it did. Hezbollah is doing what it's doing. The Houthis are doing what they're doing. The proxies in Syria and Iraq are doing what they're doing. And the mastermind, President Biden say, Iran is not interested in war. Iran is not interested in war in Iran, but it is fully interested in war elsewhere in the Middle East. So Iran initiated this war, and I think maybe it's time to talk about the prices that we need to take from Iran as well. because I don't see how this whole issue is going to be solved. And I'm as an Israeli, I'm afraid of a scenario that we are going to end up with a ceasefire, truly ceasefire, in Gaza, with Hezbollah, but with no defeat to Hamas, no achievement of the goals of the campaign in Gaza, and no elimination of the threat coming from Hezbollah. For me, personally, very personally, it means another massacre. It means taking the risk of another massacre. And that's why many Israelis here on the north are saying we're not going to go back to the homes. If Israel is not, the IDF is not promising us that there is no Hezbollah in South Lebanon that can launch these anti-tank missiles. There is no Hezbollah in South Lebanon that can invade, only a matter of decision. We're not going to go back to the homes. And this is a huge problem, and it needs to be addressed this way or another. I will stop here, and it's time for questions. I would be happy to answer all of your questions here. And I don't have a moderator. I'm an Israeli. So as I'm always saying, please be patient with me, reading the questions and answering them. Okay, and please just write the question because I can't read everything while I'm speaking. Somebody is saying here that we're kind of the leader of the free world. I want to say something. I don't know if we are the leaders. Yeah, we want to be modest, but we are definitely the front of the free world with the dark world, with the dark ideologies. And each time I see the framing Israel-Hamas war, I'm frustrated. And by the way, we seen the same scene in Alma Center. We wrote in our website, Israel-Hamas war, because we know this is how people will search this war. But actually, this is not Israel-Hamas war. This is Israel war with dark ideologies. Why does not Israel move well beyond the Litani River to the north? If we will do that, this is full-scale war. Full-scale war means another front, means divisions of the IDF inside Lebanon, means a lot of firepower inside Lebanon, means a lot of casualties in Israel, and means a lot of casualties in Lebanon as well. So, in order to do that, we need to be well-armed. We need to make sure that we're done with Gaza, because it's better not to fight the two fronts war if we have the option. And we need the international legitimacy, because again, many Lebanese will get killed because of the human shield tactic of Hezbollah. I don't see that happening now. Is that true that Israel was going to attack Hezbollah on October 11 and the US pressured Israel not to? Well, your guess is as good as mine. I truly don't know. I was not in the meeting room between Netanyahu and President Biden, so I don't know. To my understanding of the IDF, Israel was not interested in a two-fronts war. It wanted to finish with Gaza. I think the question that should be asked to answer this question is whether Hezbollah was on its way to attack us at those days, and maybe IDF thought to go to a preemptive attack. This makes sense. If there was an evaluation in the IDF that we must go into Lebanon for a preemptive attack, it makes sense. But today, I'm not sure that there was a plan for an attack by Hezbollah right after Hamas. I don't know. There wasn't. And that's why I'm not sure that IDF wanted to actually attack Hezbollah. It's an open question. We don't know. Can the twin goals of rescuing hostages alive and whipping out Hamas be achieved? That's the $1 million question. As I've said, these two goals are becoming more and more contradicted, yet eventually Hamas kidnapped these hostages to become human shield. Hamas believe that there will be enough pressure on the Israeli government to bring back the hostages and to stop the war completely. This is what Hamas want. So anything beneath this level, it's not within the interest of Hamas. I don't see Hamas agreeing to any deal in situation that it can survive, that it has humanitarian aid coming every day, including fuel for the rockets, that Philadelphia route, which is the underground tunnel below the surface coming from Egypt, is not blocked yet, as far as we know. IDF hardly worked in Rafiah, very, very little, which is the town right on the border with Egypt. We are not there yet. And with all the pain, I pray for the hostages to be back, but I'm not sure that Hamas will enable us to see them alive again. I'm truly not sure. And I think it's extremely important that a lot of international pressure will be focused on this issue. With Qatar, with the Egyptians, with the Americans, that's maybe the only hope that we can talk about, because the Qatar is hosting the leaders of Hamas. So it has a tool of pressure in opposed to all the rest. Is it possible that Hezbollah could try and use chemical weapon? And if so, how is Israel preparing for this? I don't know how Israel is preparing for this. Chemical weapon, very tactical. I'm not sure they have the chemical weapon that you've seen in Syria, but maybe they have what we call small dirty bombs, and that it's easy to make and it's easy to use. I'm not sure they would do that against Israelis in Israel. They may do that in the battlefield. That's what we know. The majority of Israelis seem to support the continued elimination of Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists in spite of the cost. The answer is yes with regard to Hamas. I am not sure with regard to Hezbollah. I don't know. I didn't see polls around that. In the north, the answer is yes as well. I'm not sure that all Israelis are aware of the cost. But again, there is a cost to go to war with Hezbollah, and there is a cost not to go to war with Hezbollah. It's kind of unfair to ask us this question. I'm not criticizing anybody, of course, but what do we prefer? To deal with the threat now and get a lot of rockets, or not to deal with the threat and maybe be surprised in the future by an invasion? I think the Israelis that are living up north are more afraid from an invasion, from a massacre, like we've seen in the south, because this had tremendous psychological impact on us over here. We felt that we saw the promo of what was supposed to happen to us. By the way, I'm sorry for my voice today. I spoke the whole day, so. How come Cornet can't be stopped? Cornet missile is an anti-tank missile. It was designed to be launched like this. Iron Dome is a very sophisticated system, but it was designed to intercept rockets that flies like this. And this is the meeting point between the interceptor and the missile. If Cornet is targeting a tank, which is an anti-tank missile, it can be stopped. Not 100%, but it can be stopped. And it happens. And the Israeli tanks are equipped with a defense system against anti-tanks, but not homes, and not military bases, and not people, and not farmers, and not farms. And that's why it can't be stopped in the current campaign, because they are not launched only against tanks. They are launched in most cases against something else. How many Hamas fighters were killed so far? As I've said, due to the IDF, 10,000 fighters, 10,000 terrorists. 1,000 of this number were killed in October 7th inside Israel, or in the following days inside Israel after the invasion, and 9,000 were killed in Gaza. What is found under? I think the question is, where is the command center and what is found under Shifa? I think there is more than one command center. It was in Shifa, we had a few more, and now we are talking about the command center in Khan Yunis. what was found under Al-Shifa is a Hamas command center with a net of tunnels, huge net of tunnels with few floors, including munition, very well concreted and actually safe from the Israeli bombing, and a lot of munition as well inside the hospital, not only under the hospital. Do you think the current government has the courage and competency to go full-out war with Lebanon? I'm not sure. But I think that even the current government, if it will have no choice with regard to the question, how do we bring the people back to their homes, eventually will have to do what it takes. And as I've said, the feeling here in the north is that the tension is rising all the time, but no one can say exactly when and how it's going to end or to explode. It's not easy to live like that. After October 7th, when so many ordinary Palestinians betrayed their Israeli employers in Gaza, celebrated Jewish death, do most of the Israelis you speak to believe that the enemy of Israel is or the Palestinian people generally? Okay, this is a very good question. First, I want to differ West Bank from Gaza. Second, I want to say that yes, with regard to Gaza, the feeling is that, as one of the hostages who came back said, there is no innocent Gazians. They were all collaborators and all believed that the massacre is the right thing to do. And remember, in the video that IDF published, you can see one of the terrorist murderers calling his mother and saying happily, "Mom, I just killed 10 Jews." In every home, you find rockets, you find tunnels. It means that the support of the Gazians to the campaign of Hamas against Israel was extremely big. This is very sad to say that. We all saw the pictures of the videos that were published from Gaza of the young children spitting on the Israeli woman's body after she was raped and kidnapped to Gaza. These are sights that we cannot forget. Yet, I think that with regard to Gaza, there is hope because Gaza was destroyed. And there is a huge question now, who is going to rebuild it? And my question, who is going to rebuild the schools? If it will be UNRWA, we're going to end up in the same situation. If it will be somebody else that will educate the children that Gaza can become Dubai, Gaza will become Dubai within a decade or two. It can happen. I strongly believe in this. But we need to have somebody else there that's not perpetuating the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and not perpetuating the radical ideology of Hamas. With regard to West Bank, it's a little bit more complicated. First, because Israelis disagree with regard to West Bank. Second, because Palestinians disagree with regard to West Bank. We know that there weren't any elections in West Bank for many years since 2007 because Mahmoud Abbas, the president, is afraid that Abu Mazen is afraid that if there will be elections, Hamas will win. So there is wide support to Hamas in West Bank as well. We haven't seen the Palestinian Authority leadership condemning the massacre. We're still waiting for that. This is crucial to rebuild the trust of the Israelis in any peace process. And from the military point of view, I want to address that as well. The IDF, and I was part of the IDF for many years, is putting a lot of efforts to distinct between the terrorist and the population. The children that spit on the dead body of the Israeli woman in Gaza are considered innocent civilians, even though what they did. It's painful for me to say it, but on the other hand, they are still children. This distinction is a challenge. We want to make this distinction, but it is very challenging in this kind of situation. And I think this is why in many cases we are being blamed for killing civilians, because it's really difficult sometimes to distinct, and Hamas knows that. And sometimes they walk in Gaza, putting their guns in a building, not armed, wearing civilian clothing. They are not involved in the war. And then they take the gun and they open fire immediately. So they are not civilians. It's really, really difficult to create this distinction. What do I mean when I say maybe it's time to address or confront Iran? Let's start with agreeing Israel and international community that Iran is the problem and not the solution. Okay? Let's start with that. Second, let's make sure that we keep our eyes open on the nuclear issue, because I feel like we don't. Third, let's not make business with Iran at all. None of us, completely, for any reason whatsoever. And third, I miss the US carrier. I want her back. Now, here's another idea. Just that maybe there are more ideas. Which IRGC assets, if struck by US, would meaningfully degrade the RI's capabilities? I think this question represents the search for quick solutions. In every campaign, a military campaign, the strategic assets are strategic weapons and headquarters. This could be thousands, not even hundreds, thousands that are spread all over the Middle East and all over Iran. So there is no quick solution here. If there is a decision in the international community to go after Iran or the IRGC in the Middle East, for example, like, I don't know, it's in a way suggested here, there are military targets that could be attacked, but it's going to take time. It's going to be a campaign. What is the probability that military militias will assist us by attacking Hezbollah during a ground operation in Lebanon? You know, my immediate response would be very unlikely. The Christian has a little bit of a military force. The Druze have a little bit of a military force, but I am not sure they will assist Israel by attacking Hezbollah. Maybe if Hezbollah will launch missiles from Druze areas, you may see attacks against Hezbollah. If there will be internal attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon during a war with Israel, it would not be in order to assist Israel. It will be part of developing civil war in Lebanon, which is an internal issue that is in the background constantly, all the time. Iranian activity in Jordan. I don't have the full picture. I'm sorry, because we didn't research that yet. I know it's important to research that. I'll put it this way. We do see activity around smuggling of drugs and weapons through Jordan. And we do see the Jordanians are fighting this with really full power. Not enough success, but fighting this with full power, probably with a little bit of help as well. Iran views Jordan as a transition area to its munition, to the border. I think it's a strategic area for Iran. There are not enough Shiites in Jordan that will provide a platform like you see in Lebanon, in Iraq. There are Shiites, but not enough. I think that the platform eventually could be the Palestinians of Jordan. And I must say that we may be surprised one day. You know, intelligence always failed to predict revolutions or popular revolutions, and definitely the stability of Jordan is, with all the problems, is an interest of the state of Israel. Also because of Iran. More than one enemy can develop from Jordan. Iran is one of them. How do you fight an enemy whose modus operandi is death too holy when you believe life is holy? The answer is simple. First, we get rid of the word deterrence, because deterrence is all about taking the price from the enemy, making him pay a price which he is willing to pay anyway. The only way to fight this enemy is to damage its capabilities. Hezbollah was, as an example, it doesn't matter, was very busy in building its capabilities in the past 17 years. If we truly want to fight Hezbollah, we should damage the capabilities that were built. We have done that now, too late, with Hamas. We damage the capabilities. By the way, it doesn't mean defeating, not even Hamas. It doesn't mean defeating Hamas. We didn't defeat Hamas yet, but we definitely fought Hamas in an effective way. And if Hamas will continue to control Gaza, which I hope it would not, it means that within a few years, we'll have to do it again. Okay, look, there are different kinds of tunnels. There are border crossing tunnels. IDF blocked them and saying there are no more, I hope. They may be tunnels that end before the border and that way enable the Hezbollah military operatives to get near the border and then cross it very quickly. There are strategic tunnels like you've seen in Gaza. We've seen strategic tunnels in Lebanon as well, where they can actually hide a launcher or transfer weapons or transfer operatives from one area to another inside Lebanon. These are huge strategic tunnels of tens of kilometers. They exist. The terrain is different. The tunnels in Gaza are all covered with cement because it's sand. The tunnels of Lebanon are mostly excavated in the rock. They don't need a cement, but it takes long time to excavate it. And they had all the time in the world because they started in the end of the 90s. So there are many different types of tunnels. By the way, we published that in our website many times, reports about Hezbollah tunnels. And yes, it puts a great challenge to the IDF there as well. And the terrain in Lebanon is much bigger than Gaza, and it's not flat. So to maneuver in Lebanon, it's also quite a challenge. It is possible, but it is more challenging to maneuver with tanks on an area which are hills and valleys. Is there talk of IDF taking over border with Egypt? Will that affect peace with Egypt? What Israel is doing now is to make sure that it will not affect the peace with Egypt, because this is a strategic asset of Israel. And that's why there is kind of a dialogue now between Israel and Egypt, how exactly IDF should treat the border area. And that's why we hadn't done that until now, because we need to figure it out. And I believe we'll find a way. What can those of us in the US do to be helpful? How much time do you have? Few things you can do to help. First, spread the word. Spread the word of this conversation and others that we've made since the war started. Spread the word of the fact that there is war up here in the north that is not reported. Spread the word that it's not Israel-Hamas war. Spread the word. Second, work with your children. The future generation in United States that finished college and going to college. I saw the demonstrations, and it was really sad for me that there is very lack of understanding. So make sure that when your kids are going to college, they study the Israeli narrative and they study the Palestinian narrative. They don't study just one narrative. Make sure that when they are going to college, they also study the truth and not false. And they can judge, they learn how to judge information and not to believe everything they see in the TikTok. Make sure they don't divide the world to black and white, literally and not literally, that they understand there is a lot of gray here and that the reality is very complex. And of course, continue the military assistance. I don't know which level you mean in this question, how you and the US can help, but the US as a state, as a government can help us, should continue to help us with providing the munition and of course the support with regard to Iron Dome. We need the US support here. We need the US support here with the munition, with even psychological support, and with the fact that it will understand that this is a campaign between the Western world and dark ideologies and not just a two-state solution and that's it, we're done. Okay, that's the best way to put it. Yeah, reports indicate that northern hospitals are preparing for an island or desert situation, a situation which would mean no communication for days with the outside world and the ability to treat 1,000 people. Is this a true report? Yes, it is a true report. I think it's kind of a lesson from what happened in the South, and it's also the lesson is that we must be prepared according to the enemy's capabilities, and the enemy's capabilities, or the enemy's, at least will try to shut down communication, to block the main roads. And that's why if there will be a full-scale war with Lebanon, with the Hezbollah, it's important that this time the hospitals will be prepared. And I think that's why we've seen these reports. So what is more likely? There is a question is actually, what is more likely? A kinetic action can change the status quo. Anything short of kinetic action will change the status quo. One of the reporters I hosted today told me that, Sarit, why are you talking about international force like UNIFIL? You should talk about international force like the one who fought against ISIS. This was effective. So if there will be an international force that will fight Hezbollah the same way it fought against ISIS in Lebanon, wow, this gives me a lot of hope. And maybe Israel will not have to be kinetically involved in anything that will happen inside Lebanon. I don't see Hezbollah disarming voluntarily. I see Hezbollah fooling us that it had withdrawn from South Lebanon. This can happen. They may say they did, but they will not. And that's why I'm so worried. And we've been there, done that, 17 years ago. We had an agreement. We had a UN Security Council resolution that was accepted by Lebanon, and nothing happened. Yes, this webinar is being recorded, and we will publish it and share it within the next few days. There is one more question here that I want to address before we end, and I know there are many more. You are all welcome to send me your questions, and we'll try to answer them by email or WhatsApp. Time is up. I'll take like one or two questions here. So does the IDF agree with the number of Gaza casualties announced by Hamas? Actually, we have no tools to agree or disagree. That's the bottom line, truly. We don't know. Look how much time it took Israel to announce how many casualties we had on October 7th. And I'm not sure that until today we know the exact number. So to the declarations of Hamas, to me, they look like too quickly. Even if they don't mean to exaggerate. It's just look too quickly. How do they know? But I must say that this shouldn't be the discussion. Because even if it's not 30,000 people, but 10,000 civilians, 5,000 civilians, the bottom line is the question, who should be held accountable? Because it is a catastrophe. Gaza was destroyed. Many Gazians don't have any home to go back to. They were evacuated. There is kind of a humanitarian situation there. I don't deny all of that. And many of them were killed. I don't deny all of that. Who should be held accountable for that? That's the main question that all of us should deal with. And if we will all agree that Hamas should be held accountable for this catastrophe humanitarian situation in Gaza, and we will all agree that in order to make sure that this will never happen again to the Gazians, we should defeat Hamas, and we should build Gaza again in a more peaceful way with a peaceful ideology. We are, dealing with the true problem. But if we will continue to count the deaths in Gaza versus the deaths in Israel, and continue to deal with that instead of asking who is responsible, we're not going to end this war ever. Are there miles of tunnels inside the Lebanese border? As I've said, yes, there are. For strategic reasons, meaning to transfer launchers, ammunition, fighters from one area to another, from Beirut to the south, from the Bekaa Valley to the south, etc. And maybe also other kind of terms. Okay, our time is up. I want to thank you all for being with us. To apologize that I didn't answer all the questions. I know there are many more. Please join us next time as well. Be in touch with me, spread the word, share what we publish. And if you love what we do, you're all welcome to donate as well. Alma is a nonprofit organization, and we are not supported by any government. We are based mainly on donations. And we believe that part of the way to win is to spread the knowledge. And this is what we are trying to do here. So thank you for being with us today. Donate. You can enter our website. You'll see how to donate over there. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe.